think I'm actually going up here. Or do I stand here?
No, the mic up there is good. You can see it.
Talk amongst yourselves. Just kidding. Thanks, Ethan. That was really sweet. Okay. There we go. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ who's in recovery for codependency / love and relationship addiction, psychological abuse, complex post-traumatic stress, and suicidal fantasies. And my name's Alli. Hi, guys. Okay. Have you ever heard the old tale about frogs and boiling water? The basic premise is if a frog is dropped into a pot of boiling water, it jumps out because of the sudden change in temperature. However, when the frog is placed in room temperature water and it is slowly brought to a boil, Mr. Frog doesn't perceive the danger and is cooked to death. My family growing up was the typical Bible Belt Christian family. Appearance was of utmost importance. My parents were both in education, and my dad, who's technically my stepdad, but he's been my dad since I was like 2. He was a school administrator, so I learned how to behave and smile and be polite. I often say I would have made the best little sassy socialite wife, but thankfully I married Ethan instead. Mental health abnormalities and neurodiverse brains run in my family on both biological sides. So they were picked up in me at a very young age, around 4 years old. That's when the Russian roulette game of 90s childhood mental health medications began. And for the sake of time, we're gonna kind of skip over that chapter, but just know that it wasn't pretty. Our brains are so fascinating to me, though, the way they process and store our lives, the way they respond and protect us. I don't think I'll ever really get tired of learning about the way our bodies and minds function together. It's a topic that always puts me in awe of the one who crafted and created us. Despite my neurodiversities, growing up I was expected to perform in a neurotypical manner, no matter how difficult or impossible that is for me. There beginning the self-loathing, the if I could just try a little harder, the why can't I just do this, the less than, the not good enough. And although my abnormalities were recognized, they were not understood, and they definitely weren't celebrated. They were treated as a blemish that was proactively covered up in conversation with the talk of Alli's high IQ or her athletic ability or whatever the latest shiny worthy accomplishment was. I felt as if my mom was constantly having to prove the worth of her out-of-wedlock, fatherless black sheep child to anyone within earshot. The pressure mounting and my value the pressure mounting and my value in question with each conversation I would overhear. My family probably looked awesome and picture perfect on the outside. Throughout high school, our house was like one of the gathering places for all my friends. Little did everyone know, though, the jack-in-the-boxes hidden all around the house. I didn't realize the abuse I'd been a part of, the emotional and relational instability, the unspoken secrecy, the gaslighting, the trained self-distrust, the belittling, codependency, guilt trips, public poking fun at and shaming, all laced in this familial love, which layered the confusion deeper and deeper. I read that and think anyone who describes a relationship like that would get the heck out of Dodge ASAP, family or not. But I was a frog born in a slowly boiling pot of water. Up until about 2 years ago, I was in the throes of intense psychological abuse, and I had no idea it was even a thing. I look back now at the way I used to describe the dynamics and the things that were happening, and it's almost comically textbook. I was trained to cater my life around my mom, just as she had been trained to do the same with her mother, and just as I would have most likely trained my children to do. Had the trajectory of my life not been drastically changed, I would have passed on the generational pattern of having my family and those around me cater their lives, their evenings, their holidays, their vacations around me and my moods, my feelings, my emotions, and my triggers. I would have trained those around me to look at me to set the tone for their emotional well-being. I would have trained them to give me the majority power over the atmosphere in our family and over their psychological well-being. Training them to care for my emotional well-being. Training them to filter their life through me, just as I had been trained to do. I'm naturally very empathetic. I can walk into a room and usually quickly and accurately survey the relational dynamics and energy. I quickly learned how to buffer those around me and absorb blows to better the environment and atmosphere. Little did I know that superpower I'd created was actually a hypervigilant trauma response. My relationship with God mirrored my relationship with my earthly parents, especially my dad, who's again technically my stepdad. I viewed God mostly as a disciplinarian with little time for a relationship otherwise, having little relationship with him aside from when I had done wrong in his eyes and deserved or earned punishment and correcting. Too busy and caught up in his stuff to really have any capacity at all to care about me and my stuff, unless it intercepted with his topic of knowledge and interest, and then I'd get that little hint of attention from him that I so desperately craved. I find myself, even to this day, getting a taste of his attention and falling off the wagon a bit, seeping back into my codependent ways, drunk on getting the thing my little girl heart so desperately desires. I mentioned the dynamic of my dad, who again, technically my stepdad, not necessarily because it makes like a big relational difference to me. Honestly, it feels weird for me to like call him my stepdad. I didn't grow up with my biological father. He signed his parental rights over to my mom when I was about 2, so that my dad could adopt me when he married my mom. Does that make sense? Okay. So he's pretty much always been my dad. But it is one of those things that's always been kind of like right there in my mind. And both the dynamics with my dad as well as my biological father have created lenses I've used to filter my thoughts about myself and those around me. I'll just speak for myself. But for me, a lot of my deepest hurts are so multifaceted. All the facets that tie and connect together, kind of like the picture with the red string and the cork board, and the detective is like, has crazy eyes and is like pinning it all together. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so it's kind of like that. My hurts and my habits and my hangups and their effects all kind of connecting to create this web of pain that sometimes, oftentimes, was too overwhelming for my head and my heart to try and digest. So I just didn't really. I was aware enough to know that those hurts were there, and I took the route that my awareness was enough. But honestly, on a slightly less comprehensive level, I was deeply terrified that if I opened Pandora's box, I couldn't handle it because I'm not enough. It's too much. Common thought patterns that had been planted in my mind. The evolution of them leading me down a pathway of suicidal fantasies or ideations. Several marked moments come to mind. One when I was in high school. I think I was about 17 or 18. I wrote, "I want to die," in mascara on my closet wall. Later that year, I acted on the thought, mildly, knowingly not enough to completely follow through, but acting on it nonetheless. I was put in counseling for a couple months, and it was never spoken of. And then roughly 10 years later, it was brought up with my whole family present around the table as a joke at my birthday dinner. August 21st of 2020, I was 5 weeks postpartum with my third baby in 4 years. So that was a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 5-week-old newborn. We'd walk to the park after dark to see this hot air balloon display that the park was hosting. Some of you guys may have been there. But the whole town seemed to be there. Cars were lining the street, people filling up the sidewalks. We got to the park, and my gut had that feeling. And it hit me. My husband was drunk. That's when I found out Ethan was an alcoholic and could no longer hide his addiction. In the following days and months, my already unstable mental health went spiraling deeper and deeper. A familiar thought pattern I'd had before seeped back to the surface. It's too much. I can't handle this. This is just my life, and I can't do anything about it. But you could be free of all this. This could all just go away. The familiar pathways flooding my thought life once again. Between my high school years and my 3 rounds of postpartum depression and anxiety, the path was heavily worn down by now. I felt alone, overwhelmingly hopeless, and utterly depleted. I felt like I had no one who cared about me more than they cared about themselves. No one who put my well-being above their own desires. I remember nights of sobbing, feeling like I was just a throwaway person, here to serve everyone else in my life, especially those who were supposed to love me, those who were supposed to automatically care about me. I remember nights of crippling panic attacks that would only end when I passed out and fell asleep. Hopelessness engulfing me. Ethan immediately started coming to CR when his alcohol and nicotine addictions came to light. I remember asking him if he wanted me to come with him, and his response was that he wanted to do this on his own for right now. Ouch. Echoes of abandonment and rejection settled deeper in my heart. As Ethan's recovery started to take form, I remember being resentful, feeling like he's the reason we're here in this mess, and now his recovery is starting to yield changes in his life. Yet here I am, just as rocked, nay, more rocked than I was months before. How is it that now I'm the one lagging behind him? My spiral deepened, as did my dependency on others to keep me afloat. The support I was grasping at was more than those in my life could manage in a healthy way. And honestly, it was a burden that was more than one or two should solely bear. They urged me to join Ethan at Celebrate Recovery. So on the night Ethan got his 6-month chip for alcohol, I got my first blue chip, my night 1 chip. Through my own recovery, my growing relationship with Jesus has stripped away the facade of control I once had. My life experiences have obviously played a big role in that, but I can remember a crossroad where the download finally completed, and it just clicked. God had made my facade of control known to me. My eyes had been opened. I can now see that it was all smoke and mirrors. And in that moment, I knew I had a choice. I could continue to either stuff that down and feed the illusion I was desperately grasping onto, or I could lay my broken self-preservation tactics, my pain, down at the cross. I learned how to loosen my grip. God showed me what healthy relationships and healthy boundaries looked like. He showed me the path to why I didn't trust him and the ways I project my painful earthly relationships and their patterns onto him. He showed me that I can truly trust him and that I could allow myself to believe and rest in the knowledge that he wants good for me. He has plans to prosper me and not to harm me. And when I truly believed that, I was able to begin to surrender my need for control, and along with it, the subconscious attempts at self-preservation that facade of control gave me. My subconscious thought pattern, if I can just have a jump on what's happening, if I can get out ahead of it, maybe I can manipulate it so it's not that bad for me. When I began to rest in the fact that he has hope and a future for me, I gained confidence. I gained the confidence to realize and recognize that I'm not crazy for feeling the way I did about some relationships in my life, even despite their relation to me. The pattern of these relationships thrived off of my self-doubt, keeping me feeling like I was crazy and couldn't trust myself. The healthy relationships I've formed have helped me weed out and turn down the volume on those voices in my life. I also gained the confidence to redirect my thought patterns and form new neural pathways. And when those old patterns try and wiggle back in and the devil tries to remind me of where I used to find comfort, I'm confidently able to declare, that's my old house. I don't live there anymore. Something I first heard here at CR. Like I mentioned, the relationships in my life began to change. I learned about boundaries, and not to be melodramatic, but they legit transformed my whole entire life. Boundaries completely rewrote what I believed about my relational energy, especially my beliefs about the amount of energy I had and honestly even still have for my kids. When I was draining the majority, some days even all, of my mental and emotional energy on relational vampires, I ran out when it was time for me to give it to where God called me. And in this season, that's largely my kids. Before recognizing the relational vampires in my life, I gave off the vibe that my kids were pretty much constantly a relational nuisance. I treated them as if they were the vampires, draining the life out of me, depleting me of who I'd once been and the relational energy I'd once had. Often turning ugly and abusive, I recognized the need for change. I had the desire to be different, but I could not carry it out. My compulsive behaviors and my misdirected rageful outbursts had become unmanageable. But as I set the necessary boundaries in my life, relational energy came flooding back. Along with it, patience and grace and joy and the ability to genuinely enjoy my kids, which up to that point, I wasn't sure if that was even possible. As I anchored down in a healthy environment at CR, I gained the security to break out of the bubbles I'd been programmed in. I was able to begin to allow people to speak truth into my life and actually believe what they said, because there was truly nothing in it for them. No double standard, no hidden agenda. And as I began to receive truth, a light was shown on anything that didn't line up with truth. Exposing false framework, false ideologies were torn down and rebuilt. False societal and cultural norms of who I should be were replaced with truths of who he created me to be, who I am. And as all that broken and false framework was exposed, it was rebuilt with grace and love and the acknowledgement of the power I have through the Holy Spirit to change my circumstances. Aside from Ethan, most of those unhealthy relationships in my life haven't really changed yet. I say yet because I'm hopeful. I know God is a God of restoration, and I live in that. I also now know that I'm called to live at peace as much as it depends on me. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Romans 12:18. I am called to, if possible, live at peace. I am not called to lay down my peace for peace. The passive and sometimes not so passive criticism, the deep-seated codependent dynamics, the instability, they're all present still and prominent players in my life. But now, instead of playing on the field during the game, they get to hang out on the sidelines. Or maybe for some, they're in the stands. Or some are in the locker room where I can't hear them. And for some, they don't even know I have a game. But wherever they are, they don't control me, and I don't try and control them. And now that my exposure to the toxicity is vastly limited, I can show up to some of those relationships on occasion and still maintain my health and my recovery. Part of my hope and future was finding CR, where I now get to facilitate an open share group at Ridgecrest. I also get to host monthly girls' nights at our house and am facilitating a year-long women's Bible study as well as a women's step study, all of which I truly believe that God has put in my lap because now, with his guidance, I have the capacity to steward them. Now I'm able to walk into that space he's invited me into. He's given me a passion for creating an environment where women can safely grow together in healthy community while pointing everything back to Jesus. Because it's all about Jesus. He's our only hope in a true and lasting recovery. Through my husband's addictions, Jesus saved my life, and he's ready to save yours. I've got a song for you guys. Thank you.
Dear God, I've been trying awful hard to make you proud of me, but it seems the harder that I try, oh, the harder it becomes, and I feel like giving up most of the time. Dear God, I've been chasing their approval and it's killing me. And I know the more I try to prove, oh, the less I have to show. And I'm stuck inside my head most of the time. But if I pray a little harder, if I follow all the rules, I wonder, could I ever be in love? 'Cause I try and try just to fall back down again. And I ask myself, why do I try to chase the wind? I should lean into the mystery. Maybe hope is found in the melody. So I wanna try again. Oh, I'm gonna try again. And dear child, I hope you know how much I love you, and I'm proud of you. And please believe the thoughts I have for you will never change or fade away. And when you felt like giving up, I never ever did. 'Cause I'm not scared of imperfections or the questions in your head. Just know that you have always been enough. 'Cause you tried and tried, and I saw you wrestle with every how, every why. I was right there listening. So just fall into the mystery, and I'll meet you here in the melody. Try just to try again. Oh child, would you try again? My child, you can love again.